Hello, it's showtime. We are live. Oh, are we live? Yeah, we're live now. Hello, here with Joe. Today we're revisiting the age old conversation, at least as long as Joe and I have known each other,
Mhm.
about being yourself versus accommodating yourself to the subjective and inaccurate interpretations of others. How much do you compromise who you are to validate other people's misperceptions?
Oh yeah,
And
this is something I mentioned on in chat on Kane's channel when he was live earlier today. Did
yeah,
you see that?
yeah, that's what
Okay,
started this whole topic. I saw it
okay. Because I
about
left shortly after remarking that and continue with some other things I was doing.
the basic idea is if you're being your natural self and you come across as a threat, you believe it's you have a social duty to adjust yourself if you're scaring somebody. And I believe that you have a duty to yourself to stay true to yourself and continue to be who you are. And I've brought up the example before of the lady that said I was violent because I talk with my hands. Am I supposed to stop talking with my hands? No. Just because she has this extra sensitivity or belief that that indicates violence and that she is now under threat because she's sitting across from at a table of someone talking with their hands. I've talked about a training where they told me because I was tall and male, I have to be aware of how that could be seen as threatening or intimidating by other people. I don't believe that it helps anybody to cater to or validate that kind of bullshit. And so there's certainly a line where it becomes absurd to change who you are because somebody feels threatened. Because somebody could be threatened over anything. The headphones you wear in your
I
cap,
agree.
but you would place things like having a strong emotion or being passionate or excitable or animated on the other side of the line that I would place it. And so I think we agree that there are some things that it's just ridiculous to expect people to change because other people might feel threatened by it, but that there are some things that you think that it is reasonable for people to change, like the level or intensity of their emotion or their passion. And so I think we just disagree about where that line is drawn.
Yeah, I think that that might be the case, and but I would agree with you that there's definitely a line somewhere, and there is a point where it becomes absurd to accommodate yourself to people. So some of my own thoughts on this really come back on my reflections of my own upbringing and my family. Um, so I can elaborate on that more if it helps. Um, so because for me, I grew up in a household where there was just a lot of anger and yelling. That's the way a lot of conflict happened. It wasn't a violent household, but it was just there was a lot of hostility, and a lot of it was due to the instigations of my mother. And as I've shared before, I no longer speak with her, and essentially, my decision to stop speaking with her and to continue with that up to this day, came from the fact that I think she's on the side of the line where things become absurd, where just about anything you do to try and make her feel like she's doesn't need to be on the defense or she's not being attacked, whatever it is that's going on in her head, just requires an absurd level of bending over backward, and even to the point that you will still not be successful. Like you're just going to hit a failure state every time. And so I would say at least if we're trying to figure out where someone is on the line, even if the line itself is can be difficult to draw, um, you can at least sort of figure out what side of it you're on, maybe with some margin of certainty. If you look for signs like that, like how difficult is a person to please, how are they pathologically unhappy? If that's the case, it's really no point in trying to adjust yourself for them.
Does it
Uh,
make a difference if it's a stranger and you don't really know all of that? It's just some like a coworker or somebody at a meeting. You're at the same board gaming event or
uh,
something.
I think with strangers, it's not bad to give people the benefit of the doubt a lot, but you would need to know that there's a pattern. I think um, that someone's not going to be worth pleasing. Now, in some cases, even if it's a stranger and it's your first interaction with them, if it's maybe a certain type of social rule that you've come to realize it's just a bad social rule, um, then you might think, well, I don't need to worry about that. So like
I think all social rules are bad social rules.
Well, some
Let
aren't
me
bad.
rephrase that. I think any rule that I don't have input into, that somebody else just arbitrarily determines, is a bad rule. Like I'm
Well,
not obligated to follow anybody's social norms that I don't develop in collaboration with them.
yeah. So, like a good example is like I had talked before about apologies and the culture of apologies. You know, when I think about it, I feel like the vast majority of the time, the culture of apologies just does not actually get the intended result. People,
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
yeah. I mean, just in my experience, I feel like people apologize for things that aren't their fault a lot, and just sort of become, a doormat for people who want to use apologies as a mechanism for bullying and abuse. And
Right,
then,
but okay, let me pause you right there. Because the same way that people will use apologies, they will use your emotional level to manipulate in the same way. So why is it okay to wave it away when it's apology culture? Say no, I'm not going to play into that. I'm just going to continue to do what I'm doing. But with emotions, it's somehow different, and you can, even though you're open to the same manipulation. One culture will use apology, the other culture will use emotion. But somehow it's okay to adapt your emotion to their expectations, but not your apology to their expectations in an apology culture.
sure, I think if I continue, I will get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, essentially, I just found it that even if we're isolated incidents or people where I got to see multiple instances, I could not find examples where the intended effect of the apology culture is really reached. Whereas to say that remedy is made and people are able to go on. It usually just seems like it's a charade or a manipulation, and rarely ever sincere or fixing things in the long term. And so that's an example where even if I don't know someone so well, um, I can kind of think, well, this is just not worth doing because it just when has it ever actually worked? I think it's one of those things where apology culture being something of a failure is something that people are afraid to say out loud, and it's kind of one of those things where you put yourself at risk if you do. Um, but when it comes to just general reactions, like who was it? It was on the panel. Uh, it was Shift Happens, I think.
Yeah, when she
Yeah,
showed up and she said you were being too intense, I would not have done anything. I would have said, well, then go find another panel. But you're like, okay, I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll change so that you can be more comfortable on the panel.
yeah. So one thing that's interesting there is it's very related to, again, my reflections on my upbringing, and so I began to think about having gotten through college, being on the other side of that, a few years into adulthood, much of it away from my parents, reflecting on the things about um, my early adulthood that had not gone well, the setbacks I'd had, the relationships that had not panned out well, or were continuing not to pan out well, and then sort of thinking about uh, where I stood with my parents and my mother in particular, thinking more about like what the sum of events had been, um, and noticing that there were just a lot of bad trends that, um, like bad patterns of behavior in my mother that had become more recently clear. I thought about things about her that I did not like, and I continually found it difficult to rectify in my mind. Um, just ways in which she was basically lived her life as a petty tyrant, and I thought about the ways in which that had, like looking back, the science had always been there, but as a naive child who just sort of takes, your parents' authority for granted, I didn't really think about it much at the time. Um, and I thought about the times that about the kinds of standards she had set, the expectations she had set, um, that had made a lot of my own missteps as an adult seem like the normal thing to do, where I could antagonize people. Sometimes this could be by, yelling at them or insulting them. And I thought about, like, just what was the purpose of my mother having that response to things. She could, I mean, she never really had many good reasons for things. She just wanted things to be her way. And since she didn't have a good reason for things, it's not
That
like
is a good reason. She's a control freak. She wants her will.
Well, I think she realized that to other people it would not be a good reason, and that
Oh.
when it came time to like explaining things, she was obviously going to be proved that she was just being stubborn for no reason about things. She just had this compulsive, this isn't right in her head, even though um, almost nobody would agree. She just had a very specific idea of how you do things. Like, like, I mean, when I talk about specific, like, she would scrutinize like the exact amount of like soap you would put on a dishwashing brush,
She's
or
not
or or,
OCD.
or a cleaner. She is OCD,
Oh.
and she has OCD and other things. Who knows? But uh, um, and then of course, when other people would just find this completely off-putting and to be like more trouble, like her to be more trouble than she's worth, uh, she would not have the self-awareness to realize how she's just sort of setting unrealistic goals for herself and others that are just doomed to fail. A good example is she was afraid to get rid of things, but she did not like the house being messy. But if you're afraid to get rid of things, and you keep holding on to stuff, but the amount of space in your house does not grow, what's going to happen over time? Do you think it's going to be easy to keep the house tidy? No. And so that was like an example where I just sort of realized she was constantly the architect of her own failures. If you examined anything that's a problem in the household, it would quickly become apparent that just her own stubborn lines in the sand made it impossible to solve problems or be flexible to anything, because she wanted everything to contort into some shape that it just couldn't take. And so her response, because I think she could sense that this would be figured out, would just be to get angry and yell and just be threatening and tyrannical. And so, I began to reflect that about myself, and I said, you're acting like a tyrant because you learned from a tyrant. And so you need to be very careful. Like, there's very few reasons you really need to yell or be threatening to folks. Like, you're not in the wild, you're not getting jumped by a hostile tribe or a wild animal. Do you really need to intimidate people as you navigate the modern world? No, but that's kind of what you're signaling when you get angry and you
But
yell at them.
but 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 hang on. Like if somebody is just spurging out or being excitable or animated or that's do you consider that being a tyrant? Because I thought the debate was about people that perceive emotionality as a threat when it's not actually a threat. So somebody yelling and trying to intimidate or bully is different from what I thought we were talking about, which is just people naturally being themselves and having it being misinterpreted as a threat or having them or being tyrannical or whatever when they're actually not that. So if they're not being what they're perceived as being, then I don't see any reason for them to change. Like I think they can go on and continue to just be their natural self. It's just being misinterpreted.
So I think you ask a really good question, Jeff. And
I
so
usually do.
knowing what this panel is, and as well like how you are, Jeff, and just what your disposition is. And again, for you, it's sparking out, and it's part of um, your the fact that you're not neurotypical. Like, I get that, right? And I
Right,
also
but I,
know,
I do want to say I think even normal people can have strong emotions and fall under the same situation.
yeah. And but like I kind of know the deal with you. I know that it's not a threat, and that it's just the feelings coming out, and that one, you do it in a very even-handed way, like you let people do that on your panel. um and then of course you also keep things contained. Like, uh I don't think I've seen an instance where maybe someone got a reaction from you on panel, and you held it against them in a subsequent panel. Like, I don't think I've observed that happening. So
No,
um, essentially, you're doing it right. I don't think people often do that,
I'm doing spurging right.
but
We do it right
um,
on.
you're at least sort of showing the example that, yeah, it can occur, and that it's not always going to do that. But then, of course, I have to think about, what do I want to do in the world. And so um, one of the interesting things about expressing yourself, right, is that you want to be true to yourself when you express yourself, but then part of the point of expression is you're trying to convey something to other people, at least with some modicum of success, right? And if something is getting lost in the transmission, you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do to change the way I express it so that the message is successfully
If
getting
anything,
across.
what if, because I may determine that if that person is in a state of fear as I attempt to communicate, maybe that's not my audience, which is what I usually do.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
well then
so
this person is not the person I'm trying to communicate to.
right, and then of course, I of course look at myself as if it's something where I am getting frustrated to the point that I feel like I have to escalate things emotionally and take on a more threatening persona. Um,
Which is not what's I want to drill down into this because this is the issue. You keep framing it a certain way. They're being perceived as threatening. The way you're phrasing it, it seems like that you are like if somebody starts spurging out, that is threatening in and of itself. They are at that point threatening. And I think that is a misperception. One of the things I'm trying to dispel is that people spurging out are not threatening and they don't need to be perceived as threatening because that's a false perception and that inhibits them from being who they are with like just like men get it too. If men start talking in a loud voice or waving their hand, they're seen as threatening because they're men and men are threatening. So I'm trying to not play into the impression of threat. And the debate this morning was that if you're coming across as threatening, even if you don't intend to, then you need to make some kind of adjustment to have the other person feel less threatened. And I say no. I say if you're coming across as threatening when you're not intending to be by just being your natural self, then that's the other person's problem. That's the person that finds you threatening. That's their problem to deal with. Maybe they're sensitive. Maybe they don't have the same tolerance or resiliency that the people you're used to being around have. I don't think I have to do anything different. I think they have to educate themselves.
okay, and I guess for me, like
So it's this impression that if somebody starts spurting out, they're automatically threatening, and that perception is valid. That's what I want to challenge, and I don't think it is a valid perception, and I don't think it needs to be coddled or catered to.
so I don't think it's a valid perception, but I do think that I think you're probably aware, like you're aware of why people probably in many cases, probably most cases, can't tell the difference between spurging out and someone getting into like an angry tirade,
That's ignorance. Then they
right?
they just need to be more educated because
Right,
it's
and
it's easy to learn that kind of stuff. So to keep somebody in a level of ignorance when you can bring them to a level of education, to me, it seems to not only be not be helpful but dishonor them as a intellect.
yeah, and so I think it's going to depend a lot on too on what certain individuals are trying to accomplish with their lives. That it will matter how often they um, strike out with people socially, in the name of just being true to themselves and whether or not that's worth the trade off. Um, for people who are neurodivergent, it may be more worth it for them to do that. I think if we're talking about people who are more neurotypical and their angry response to things is, probably essentially it is a
But
communication
you
of
you're
threat in
doing
some way.
again that it's not an angry response. We're not talking about an actual angry response. We're talking about people being their natural self and having it perceived as misperceived as anger.
It's true. Again, I'm understanding that as well, but
Okay,
I
because
think it just depends on what that person.
spurging out is not anger. When someone's
Yeah,
spurging out, it doesn't mean they're angry.
right. But you're aware that it looks a lot like that, right?
Right, but that is a misapprehension, and that could be corrected through education.
Right.
If somebody thinks that I'm angry because I'm spurging out, I can educate them that no, I'm not angry. That it might look that way, but that's not what it is, and you can learn to understand what it actually is, so that you don't walk around with this false perception of reality.
Right. So, and I would say again, it's probably going to depend on the individual, and I guess just how neurodivergent they are, and again, what their individual goals are. I would say I would let them make the calculation of to what extent do they want to master their reactions to things such that they're not striking out with folks, if they think it's worth that trade-off or not. Because if achieving some bigger goal is more important to them, then I would say that for them, that is them being their authentic self. It's pursuing what they find to be the most meaningful and knowing what priorities to set, that certain parts of themselves don't get in the way of what they think are the most important parts of themselves.
But
So
if they're striking out because of others people's ignorance, why is the burden on them and not the ignorance?
well, I mean, I guess if you talk about it from a moral perspective, everyone could be more understanding, and that's something that could be said to everybody. But when I think about the way I proceed through life and what I can do, I can only control what my input is. I cannot control what others do. And in fact, again, we get into the issue of if I try to make them do things from a moral perspective, it would require me to be a tyrant. And I don't see how I could make others do things, even if it's the right thing to do, without imposing a certain level of wrong that defeats the purpose. That's essentially right on that. So I just have to make my peace with the fact that some people are ignorant. They're going to come to understand things on their own terms at their own pace. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen next year. It may never happen. But I just have to be patient with the fact that a lot of people just aren't going to do that at the pace that I want. And I can only grow my understanding at a faster pace, through my own proactive nature.
Yeah. It just seems like there's still a subtext of people that spurg out should learn to behave. They should learn to read the room and understand that they're making people uncomfortable or feel threatened, and they should change something about themselves instead of the people that are falsely believing that correcting their own ignorance. It puts the burden on the person spurging out when the source of the problem is actually the ignorance of the person misperceiving. But that person doesn't have to do anything. The person innocently being themselves has to somehow change who they are to accommodate the ignorance of others.
Well, it's an interesting irony here in that while Stoic philosophy, particularly in the modern age, is primarily just a moral philosophy, it had more to it. Like there was a logical component of Stoicism in the philosophy, but to the extent that it is concerned with our own moral development in modern practices, it often gets us to avoid questions of what should be or shouldn't be and not imposing those on others. So I'm important about those as it concerns me. When I discuss it generally, I mean it more as it's something that anyone who's neurodivergent can consider if they want, but I would not expect them to do anything. If someone who spurgs out a lot just consistently continues to do so, never adjusts, and maybe it leads to just several faux pas and things blowing up in their face. I wouldn't necessarily think that they're a bad or evil person necessarily, just because maybe they hadn't done what I would do about it, which is maybe look back and think, this isn't serving my goals. I want to adjust. Um, I think that's for every individual to
But
figure out
maybe
because
it is serving their goal
I mean,
because
it could
maybe their
be right.
goal is different from
That,
yours.
that's exactly it. So I don't know what their goals are. I don't know what their
To
path in
be
life is.
themselves,
I
to
don't.
act without unnecessary constraint or inhibition.
Yeah, and I don't know what their path in life is. I don't know what their place in the world is. Right? That's everyone. I think is each individual is going to be better suited to figure that out for themselves than for me to. And that's why I avoid the should of it, because I don't know what I can sort of point out what options people have and what logically follows from certain options, and then they can figure out whether they fit into it or not. And but I um, certainly don't get complacent with the idea that other people should do things, because I used to recognize that in the past, but it never got me anywhere, and that just usually led me to never making any progress with anything. So I'm it's again more focused on what is within the domain of my control, which is very few things, and just realizing that if I want things to improve with other people, um, the less I impose on them, the more likely over time I'm either to succeed or at the very least avoid creating failure and compounding it further.
Yeah, well, I only want to improve with certain people. I don't want to improve with people who are scared of me for having an emotion. That filters those people out of my life and it takes them out of my goal window. So it's like, okay, these are not the people I'm going to waste a lot of time investing in or trying to improve for. These are not my people. These are not the people I'm trying to build a society with. These are the people I'm trying to avoid, and I'm the person they're trying to avoid. So now we both have information we can use to adjust how much time we waste on each other.
There's that, yeah. And I can see how that would be something that, and just knowing you, Jeff, why that would be your appraisal of it. In my case, um, I don't necessarily know where I'm going. I know it's a winding, crooked road that I walk, so I really don't know where it's going to lead. It'll bend south someday. Some days it'll bend north another. The actual direction to me is unclear. And so for me, I think anyone who might be in my situation, the important thing is just not being so individually erratic that you fall off the road and you can't go anywhere. Um, so that's really probably the main reason is that for folks who know where they're going and have a good sense of that, um, um, making sure they stick to that course um, and don't get on a wrong detour might be important. In my case, I'm not sure there is a wrong direction for me. So the more important thing is just not falling off the road.
I'm responding to this comment on free will,
Okay.
which isn't. I to me having the free will debate is like having the God debate, but
Yeah,
I
but
try
to
not to get
sort
sucked
just
into
to
it.
summarize what I said, I look back on some of my childhood. I look back on the interactions with my mother. I thought about the things she had done to intimidate and tyrannize me throughout my childhood, and I just basically concluded, okay, even if you have some sort of impulse to be, see, angry and maybe shouty in response to things, much of this is learned, and you did not like it when your mother did it to you. In fact, you hated it every single time that it happened. And it doesn't make sense to hate it and then unleash it upon other people. So maybe try to do what your mother failed to do and chill out and, let things be and just understand that, people are going to do things at levels or standards that you might not like, but it's what works well best with them. So when I started to realize that, um, it became easier over time just to have a calmer reaction to things, to sort of know, more that to the extent that I have a place in this world, it certainly is not being the dark sequel to whatever my mother was.
Being the what?
The dark sequel to whatever my mother
Oh,
was.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope that you don't think that that people spurging out or having emotions means that they are like your mom. Like maybe your brain is conflating the two, but I certainly don't think I'm acting like your mom when I spurg out, or like that's what like her psychology is what's going on inside of me just because they
Well,
might look
again,
similar.
and I don't know to what extent, you could say she was spurging out because she certainly had some neurocognitive issues, I'm sure, but she would also just never forget anything. Like I mean, there's stuff that gets brought up 10 years later. She just does not let things go. Like, so there's no peace with her. There's no healing. There's no mending. It's always what she can leverage against you. But if you were to bring something up with her, mistake she made, she'd be like, oh, you're making me feel bad. So it's always rules that apply one way, not the other. Just completely unbalanced, one-sided relationship, and no matter how you look at it. And that's a whole thing on its own besides just spurging out, right? But she would nevertheless use explosive rage in the moment to sort of get her way. And I realized that was often just a gateway to things completely falling apart. And especially in my own interactions. And I realized that I don't necessarily have a lot going on in my life. I don't have a lot of people who are necessarily close to me. But one thing I have succeeded in doing is just, torching the ground beneath my feet. I no longer do that by putting my foot in my mouth when I shouldn't.
Oh. Is there any news on the dating front?
Uh, Not really. I guess if I see this one chick who um, comes in here a lot, usually on weekdays when she's doing work, I'll probably talk to her because she always like smiles at me like she knows me. And again, I other than seeing her here like maybe I don't know, 4 or 5 times now, um, I'm not sure why she's looking at me like that. So I figured I'd go up and introduce myself to her. I have a theory that she might be the friend of that one girl Julia I met here back in like October.
The one that stood you up, the planetarium girl.
No, 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 no.
Oh,
Julia, I did not. So that was Kayla. I met her at the board game thing. Julia was the girl who approached me right after the stream because she overheard the stream and thought it was interesting, um, and talked to me about it. So she was a friend that I made here, and she said that she was with a friend and coworker. Well, they were both doing work here at the shop that day, but since I was not like looking over there, I never actually saw what her friend looked like. So I'm wondering if that's her friend who also just comes in here more and maybe recognizes me from that. But I had never got to look at her.
have y'all talked at all? Like said hi or anything like
No,
that?
no, she just. But like when people flip around, strangers, um, they they like smile politely, um, kind of thing. I notice women do that more often than men, but it's usually kind of like a forced smile. Like you can
Because
kind
if
of
a
see their.
man does it, it's threatening. It's creepy. He
Yeah,
should
I know.
not do that, even if it's his natural self.
I've
Don't
noticed that
smile.
that men do that less often. Even with me, it's much rarer, but most women will, whatever their age or demographic
I
it's
wouldn't
in. Just
smile at you either, because you don't
um,
look like you would give anything in response.
yeah, so it's just a thing I've noticed. But it's, again, when you see like a polite smile that people do, it's almost like in a photograph. You can tell it's kind of forced, right? It's not the same. It doesn't have that same soft look that a natural smile has, like when someone's happy. But um, if you've ever like seen someone like that and they smile, that's it's more of a genuine smile when that happens. It's not like they're just doing the minimum to signal that they're friendly. I guess is one way of looking at it. And so yeah, that's the thing I noticed is like she doesn't seem like she's forcing a smile. She's looking at me almost like she knows me, and that was just it's puzzling me. So I'm like, you know what? I should just go up to her and say, hey,
Ask her, why are you smiling at me?
yeah, but if
I noticed you were smiling at me.
yeah.
What's up with that? See, I'm playing that video game, and I'm thinking all these dialogue trees and potential responses now that she could say.
Mhm. There you go. So yeah, I guess I'll chat with her and then um just keep hanging out at coffee shops and see um who I run into.
Well, I'm gonna open up the panel, so if anybody wants to come up and talk about this topic, spurging out, appearing as a threat. The topic came up in a chat from another panel earlier in the comment section, and a lot of people seem to agree. So it seemed like it was a good topic to raise because it keeps coming up. That if you're being yourself and it bothers other people, you should stop being yourself. And I don't think that's a follower mentality. I'm not a follower. I don't let other people's ignorant reactions set the social norms that I live by. I use my
Hmm.
own, I use being true to myself as the standard for that. And so for me, it has to rise to something more than that for me to find it worth adjusting to people that just don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, and I think
But a
the
lot of
extent.
people in the chats thought that there was a limit to being yourself, and if it crosses a certain line determined by again these others that don't understand, then you should put a halt on being yourself and adjust to the social needs of the ignorant people around you.
Yeah, so yeah, and I think the wisdom of I guess how pushy you are is if you want to put it one way with things is going to vary from person to person. Some people can be more pushy, they can be more assertive, they can be more hardline on some things, and they will get good results from that. There are different reasons that can be, because no two people are identical, and so you try the same approach with two different people, you will not get the same result, all else being equal. And so Um, you know, I think, for me, it just came to the point of realizing, okay, how pushy can I be? And to what point does it get where I have to be essentially a bully and a tyrant in order to get people to
I've never
give me
seen
what
you
I
even
want?
come close.
That's because I don't do it. Um, and I stay far away from that line. And and I realized that it would not take much for me to cross that line. People are not very naturally inclined to give me what I want. I understand that, and so to the extent that I will ever get anything that I want in my life, I have to take a more roundabout and patient approach to things. And
Now, I
other
have
people,
seen you like Karen a little bit, like have really strong opinions about how people should handle a situation or do something and advocate for that. But I wouldn't say that even that's being a tyrant. Hey, Z, what's up? We're talking about people being themselves and scaring other people in the process. How much should they stop being themselves at that point, or how much should they ignore those people and continue being who they are?
yeah. So it's a good thing that you don't get that impression from me, Jeff, because it does mean that I'm being successful in that regard.
See, but that's the thing with you. You hold so much back, and you do so much impression management. Nobody really knows what's going on inside of you, and so I don't ever know that because what's on this. I don't ever know anything beyond the surface, and so when it does come out here and there, like after the fact, usually I never caught it. I'm like, oh wow, I never once knew he was having that reaction. So I don't know you. I don't. That's the advantage of being yourself. Is people have all of the data, all of the information up front, and it's accurate data, and then they can make decisions and choices
Well, so
based on that.
here's
And
the
with
thing,
you,
Jeff.
I don't ever have accurate data. I have
Here's
to.
the thing, Jeff. Even when I would have a more, we'll say, just reactive response to something, that did not give people a better understanding of what I felt or what I wanted or what my goals are or what my values are. It just got people even more confused. I have
Well,
found
why
that no matter,
wouldn't it if it was an authentic
because just
response?
because it's authentic doesn't mean people will get it. And
Well, I do. I mean, I just if if you have an actual irritation versus just a flat poker face, and I don't know that there's any reaction going on you at all, I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna understand that a lot better than no reaction. I'll be like,
so
okay, Joe got really irritated at that thing, and that looked legitimate, that looked authentic and genuine to me. So I feel like I can trust my knowledge of Joe in relation to that one stimulus now.
maybe, but I would say that the vast majority of the time, people get a completely different message than whatever an emotional response from me conveys. And just taking that into account, um, having that kind of reaction does not serve me if it's throwing people off. It's much better just to
I don't
leave
know
it a
why
blank
it would throw
space.
people off. Like I don't know, because that's kind of what we're talking about today is people misinterpreting your expression.
Mhm.
And so you're saying that yours gets misinterpreted too, so your solution is to stifle the expression. And I'm saying that it's to educate people out of their misunderstandings of it, but not
I
to
don't I don't
stifle the expression.
I don't have the means to educate people on that. I don't know how I could possibly do that.
You just
So
tell them what you
I
can
don't even think
communicate. You're a
I
very
don't think
good
it's that simple.
communicator. So if you're irritated and they take it as you're being a tyrant or whatever, you just tell them no, that's not correct. I'm just
To the
irritated
extent
because
that
of
I'm a
this
good
thing.
communicator, it's because I avoid putting my foot in my mouth, and therefore I'm not alienating people. If I have an emotion reaction to things that throws people off and intimidates them, they have shut their mind to me in that moment, and clarifying things will not work then because even if they hear the facts of it, their mind is shut to it at that point.
Well, at least you
And
made the attempt.
so people are much more open to. So the point I'm making is that if I want people to understand me, it will not happen in a moment. It will happen gradually over time, but they can.
But
You,
you don't like at least you've made the attempt. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with attempting to educate somebody. If somebody thinks I'm like the lady that thought I was scary for talking with my hands, I said no, I'm gay and I'm from the South. It's not what you think. It's this other thing. Here's the explanation for it. So I attempted to give her the actual explanation. Whether she takes it or not is on her, but at least I made the attempt and I feel better for having made the attempt than just sitting there and letting her think I'm violent.
I don't. I guess I just don't feel better for having made attempts at things.
Oh,
I
okay.
feel better for having accomplished just the basic minimum of goals. And if I'm not accomplishing those, then to me the attempts don't mean
Basic
anything.
minimum what?
of goals.
Goals.
Oh. Yeah, we just
Welcome,
have
Jeff.
different
Good
goals.
to
I'm
see
trying
you.
to know and be known. I'm trying to understand others and try to help people understand me as much as they can. So we just have different goals. Mine is knowledge.
Yeah. And so
Uh,
that I mean that's really just maybe that's the simple difference between us, Jeff, which is surprising. Um,
I can relate to both of you guys, man. Like what you guys were saying. Joe, with your mother, I had the same thing with my mother, and I think it's definitely generational, kind of. I mean, yeah, complaining about the mess, but yet she's a hoarder.
mhm,
That kind of shit. And I've got it too. And my grandmother had it so bad, she would save newspapers from all the way back in the 1930s.
mhm. Yeah, my mother has this coffee table in the living room, and on the bottom shelf of it, it's these stacks of these Smithsonian
Yeah,
magazines from like
yeah,
the 90s and the year 2000 that
right.
he has not opened, and it's crazy that they're
Yeah,
still there, and it's just we could maybe put stuff that we actually use there and just have more space. There's
exactly.
this bookshelf near the front door with books that they have not pulled out and read in
But
years,
it
probably
is
20,
hard
30
to
years now.
it is hard for me to not spurg when I'm passionate about something. So I can
Mhm.
relate to Jeff with that. Like that, even if I'm not trying to be malicious about it, it just might sound like it. But
Hmm.
that's my voice, unfortunately. And also, I mean, I guess I get it from my mom. I mean, that's part of it too.
I remember one panel you were on and you were really angry about something, like worked up about stuff, and everybody was coming at you. And I just kept explaining to them that no, you get like this sometimes. This is an emotional issue. You're a punk. This is how punks are. So again, I just kept trying to. I didn't try to stop you from
Punk
expressing
rocker.
yourself. I just tried to put it in a context so people could understand,
I
like
mean,
why
like
you were acting so different that day.
it, I'm not really involved with that scene anymore, but
Mhm.
that is what the way it is because they're definitely on the other side. They like there's so many woke shit on that man. Like everybody, I can't, the only reason they stay my friends on Facebook, I think, it's probably because they have MS, maybe, and they're SJWing it all up.
What punk is, like when I go back and study it now as an adult, it surprises me how woke it was. I mean, it was anarch, like anarch,
And our
militant
woke,
leftist,
anarcho
progressive
woke.
left. It was the people that were channeling their anger at the system into the music. It was, and the ideology behind it was very woke.
Yeah,
But
man. Like,
man, did they make good music in the process?
I gotta say that, like the American punk scene, it's like for me, it was more of like a good party. I mean, like it was part of my growing up. I mean, I started when I was 15 with playing shows and stuff, and it was
Mhm.
just like, wow, this is my life now. I love this. And I'll never forget that, man. That was a part of my life I'll never ever forget.
Yeah, it still is for me, at least psychologically and
Yeah.
culturally.
No matter how much my disease will gouge my brain, it won't take those memories away ever.
Mhm.
No way.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's tough too is um, you grow up with a hostile parent or parents, maybe both of them. Is that um, it kind of it sets the tone pretty early on that being your authentic self is it can really not mean much if people aren't going to get it. If your own parent doesn't get your authentic self, if it just completely throws them off. I mean, that's essentially why I had to break things with my mother. Is she did not get me, and she would never. tried, even though she had the best ability to get me, right? We talk about educating other people. She had the best ability of anybody in the world. I guess you could say she's tied with my father in that, but to get me, and she did not, she would not. And that's my mother. So,
But I don't
um,
know that being yourself depends on it. That's my argument with the trans people. In my generation, you were you came out of the closet and you were openly gay regardless of whether people got you or not. It didn't depend on people getting you or not. It was despite or independent of that. And now the modern trans people, it's like they can't exist or don't have an identity unless people get them. Like that people it is required that people get them before they could be who they are. And maybe it's a millennial Gen X thing too.
well,
But
I will say one thing
my
that's
mom
different
didn't
with me.
understand me either, and it didn't stop me from being myself because there were plenty of other people besides her that did. So those were the people I was being myself for. And my mom rant and raved too, and we just learned to ignore her. Like I didn't internalize any of her stuff.
So Jeff, I'll just point out that I think one difference between me and them is that they are trying to mind control people into understanding them, and I have instead come to accept. Oh, there's no reason I would ever do that. Um, so I think I would say that's where the hair is split pretty firmly. There is in how you
But
respond to
but
being
you
misunderstood.
stopped. You did say though that you stopped trying to be yourself because your mom didn't get you, and that was enough
Well,
to
so
have you
you
no
really have
longer
to
attempt
ask.
it.
We have to ask ourselves, what is even being myself, right? Is being myself just my immediate visceral reaction to something? Is that all that
That's,
the self is?
no, that's not all it is, but it's part of it. Like
All
not
right.
masking.
And this is why I said, it depends on what priorities of yourself you think are at the forefront, and that's going to be different for some people, and for some folks, that could just be whatever they're feeling in the moment, and then for
Yeah,
other folks, it could depend on like if they have other long-term goals, and they feel like what, who I am is the person that will either pursue or achieve this long-term goal. I can't let my reactions to things interfere with that. That's their true self as well. Um,
but you gotta expect a lot of people different. They're gonna react differently, I guess. So it's
And
really like
welcome
it's kind of
TML.
like a hard water to wade in.
yeah, and then of course, when you learn that a lot of, and again, this is part of Stoic philosophy, is a lot of how bad something is seen not merely as something intrinsic to the thing itself, but your judgment of it. So if you look at something and you think, well, most of how bad I thought this was just my own perception that it must be terrible. As soon as I put this away, it's no longer that bad. Like there's in the past, let's say when I was like 16, for example, if Shift Happens had said what she said to me, I would have felt like attacked. Like, how dare you accuse me of being hostile? Or blah, blah. I would have gotten more into the combative, argumentative style, like was common in my household growing up.
Hmm.
But instead, I've taken a step back and just realized, well, doesn't necessarily say anything bad about me. She was just actually clearly communicating that it was overwhelming her, and that it would be easier to continue if she were not being overwhelmed. And it's nothing bad. She wasn't mean to me in pointing it out. She was assertive, but she was not cruel. Do I need to act like she was cruel? Right? To interpret that as cruelty would again have been my own judgment and catastrophizing it, which is something that my mother often did. Right? So just sort of me learning, wait, I don't have to react this way. I don't have to see things this way. I can understand that there's maybe a simpler reason for things. Things are often only as bad as I make them, and that in itself transforms me emotionally. This is why I've said, like, the act of putting on the mask can change the self. It's because when you begin to look at things through the eyes of the mask, you will see differently, and therefore you will feel differently.
But the mask doesn't always stay on because I see it come off like I'm saying after the fact, like weeks or months later, you'll start to tell the real version of what
I
happened in
know,
that
man.
moment that
I
Well,
know
nobody
all
noticed at
too
the
well.
time.
sometimes you have to understand as well that I will look back on things and reach a different judgment of it, right? So sometimes you might think, well, Joe, if you were feeling that, why didn't you tell me? Well, it's because I thought about it later and I wondered something
So,
didn't seem right about this. So I didn't have an immediately fully comprehended reaction yet, but a month later, I've been able to look back on it.
okay.
What's up,
TML,
TML? How
welcome.
you doing, man?
What are your thoughts on all this? You seem to
Greetings.
be pretty chill and about being yourself.
Man, I saw you interviewing a somebody from the UK or something, or South Africa or something.
Yeah, I think they were interviewing me. Yeah.
Was it Terriac? Was it that free will debate?
No, that
No.
Terry. That's what it was. Yeah,
Oh, you're talking about yesterday. Yeah.
that was the thing I saw. It was-
By the way, he looks a lot better without the bleached hair. You could tell him. I said that.
You mean the one on the far left bottom?
I don't really know him. I just see him on
Is
a few
that the guy?
panels.
The guy that was on the far left bottom?
So what's up?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Yeah, nothing much. Yeah,
Oh.
it was just a fun experience yesterday, definitely. But yeah, we had a fun free will debate, so yeah, I
It
think
got
everybody
hot
learned a
and
lot.
heavy, man. It got hot and heavy.
Yeah, everybody learned a lot. Yeah, that's how I do. Most of my debates are pretty entertaining,
Yeah,
so
dude.
yeah, I like the open format.
So I
So
kept watching. It was entertaining, dude.
yeah, it gets heated
I
because
got too frustrated with one of the panelists.
But it
Just the
did seem to
conversation
kind
in
of go in
general.
circles a
But
bit.
I'm not a big fan of the free will debate anyway.
yeah,
Me
you're talking about are you talking about Hanko Flamio?
No, I didn't see Hank's part actually, but I hear good things about it. People were saying how good he did.
Yeah, Hank took on like the entire panel after the
Oh, as
debate
a
was over.
moderator,
He was
No,
he
looking,
no,
was
after it
there to
was over.
mod.
looking
No, in the
sweet
question and answer, we
there.
opened up the panel.
Oh,
So
He had
okay.
the sunglasses and the was a dark purple suit and fedora. Ah, so cool. He's got like
Yeah.
how many different colors?
yeah,
He must have infinite colors of that.
yeah, I put Hank on the spot, but he was pretty much prepared for it, and he did a great job because he's familiar with the parameters of you know, what's metaphysics, where it moves to other topics. So
Hmm.
he's very clear on that. On the compartmentalization of different areas of philosophy. So
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious where you stand on. I mean, I have an idea, but where you stand on being yourself or adjusting yourself when people are freaking out about you being yourself.
well, I think I like two quotes, where they say, style is what you do when nobody's watching, and if you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. So I like people, I like people who can appreciate solitude. I like friendships where you don't always have to talk. You're not forced to say something.
Yeah.
And people aren't always judging you based on what you say. So you know,
Amen to that, brother.
yeah, because words can only communicate so much. You have to be comfortable when you're alone. All right.
I
So
think it helps. I think just
yeah,
from a mental health
yeah, if you can't
perspective,
love
it helps.
yourself, you
My
can't
problem
love other
is
people.
I think about a million things at a minute. I mean, it seems like I can't stop thinking, and it's just there. It's kind of like the ringing in my ears. It's always there.
Mine too.
It's like my mind,
Yeah,
and the ringing won't
I
stop.
just that's just normal for that. Just take that as my norm.
It's
You
getting
know,
worse for me
the thoughts.
now. The ringing in my
Oh,
ear.
is it tinnitus?
I guess it is. I mean, it's or electromagnetic frequencies of sorts that are all around me. The television, the laptop, the PlayStation, modem in the other room. God knows what else. The other people's modems. The
I
whole.
got tinnitus a couple years ago.
Oh, you did?
Did
It
anything
went
help?
away? How did it go
No,
away?
it didn't go away.
It's just you. But oh, it just started a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Do you still have
it's
it?
yeah.
Did,
It's not easy to notice when there are other sounds going on. It's something that becomes more obvious the more quiet
yeah, but
something is.
when you focus on it, it's
Like I
really
remember when it
your
started.
sleep sucks.
When it started, I was it was when I was actually like maybe a couple weeks into my job at Fidelity. This was back in 2022, so almost 3 years ago now. And uh, I was sitting at my desk. I had put my headset on, and I could notice I could hear a ringing sound, and I was like, "What is that?" And I would take it off. I would try to I look around the office. I'm like, "What could it be?" And then I noticed, in fact, it was in my ear, and it was only on my right side really at first, but then shortly after, I started to get it on my left side too.
Yeah, man.
And it's still more pronounced on my right side, I would say.
Is your
And I,
right ear your dominant ear? Does it hear better than your left ear?
I
Is it about the same?
I wouldn't say the quality of the hearing is different. And again, I would only really hear it now if I had like my ears covered. So like that, the headset was one context in which that would happen.
Yeah,
When I had to take this was god awful. This is the only time I was really bothered by it. But
I bet.
when I had to take my licensing exam for Fidelity, which was probably about 8 or 9 weeks later, they take us to this like test center. It's like this area where they just run exams and tests that have to be done in controlled environments, to prevent cheating. And so such as the licensing exams for FINRA. And so I'm in this booth. It's this really quiet office, and you put on this headset that completely like soundproofs everything around you. The quietest environment for my ears ever, and like that's the loudest my ears have ever rung. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I had to do my whole exams like that. There were 3 of them, and
Did it fuck you up?
no, I passed my exams.
That's cool.
But yeah, it was pretty annoying. But it was also kind of early in the process. Now I'm at a point now where even when I can technically hear the ringing, I don't notice it. I've just gotten accommodated to the fact that it happens.
And welcome's that.
What's going on, brother? What are you smoking? What's your brand?
Old Toby, finest
You're not.
weed in the South Father.
If you're talking, we can't hear you.
I can't hear
Blizzy,
you,
it's a
dude.
good one today. It's about
I think you're muted.
how much do you be yourself, stay true to yourself versus adjust yourself if somebody's having a reaction to how you're acting or being. And I say, unless you're intentionally hurting somebody, like you mean to hurt somebody, just full on be yourself. If somebody else has a problem with it, that's exactly what it is, their problem. And other people say that there's a point at which you should stop being yourself and adjust to other people, even if you're not intending to cause any kind of reaction in them.
Can
And
you
I don't
guys hear
think
me now?
catering to other people's.
Yeah, I can hear you now, dude. Before it was like silent.
Sorry, I had the wrong microphone selected. So
Oh crap.
Hey, what's up? Well, how you doing? What's
what's
going
up, man? How are you?
Pretty good. I think.
I'm gonna have a frozen pizza for dinner tonight. I'm so excited.
Guess what? Me too.
What brand?
Rayo's, Rao. It's spelled.
Oh,
know
it's the
that one.
sauce maker, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
know if we
use
have
that.
that
I
here.
put that in my.
How is it?
Sometimes I put that in my spaghetti.
It's good spaghetti sauce. So I know that
Oh
much.
yeah, I have seen that brand. I've just never tried it.
Yeah, I get the tomato basil all the time.
Yeah, basil's good.
That sounds good.
Also, pro tip: if you keep some fresh basil in your pockets, you'll always smell really good.
I didn't know that. I'm gonna try that. Shit.
So what's up with you guys? What are you discussing here?
Being yourself versus adjusting for other people. Like if they
Mhm.
find you threatening
I'm
with
too
something,
fucking old.
I just send them on their way. I'm like, okay, you're not my person. I'm not your person. There's no need to waste a lot of time over it.
I'm too old and stubborn to not be myself.
I don't see the value. I don't see the advantage of it. Like I pay a price in myself to make somebody else happy that I don't even care about it as a total stranger. Why would I choose that?
Well, you don't want to kiss everyone's ass because, what do they say? You can't please all the people all the time or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
Bingo.
somebody finds me threatening or doesn't like me for whatever reason, then they're free to go find. There's billions of people in the world.
Yeah, my ex-boss found me threatening because I was friends with all the young kids that worked there, all the 20-year-olds, and I got along with them great, and he didn't fucking get along with anybody because he was a dick.
Yeah,
And
what a
it's
fuckwad, dude.
no, but you know, and he had it out for me, and he had it out for this other guy, and it was obvious the way he treated both of us. You know, like he treated us like shit. And I
Yeah,
was just like, "What did I do to you? I'm the hardest fucking worker you have, dummy."
that's
Right
like
after he fired me, I bet he found out that I was doing a lot of work that
So
no
it
one
was
else
vibe.
did.
There was some vibe, something.
Something was fucked up.
yeah, fuck that, man.
Yeah,
When I first started,
I don't cater to people's. I don't let people's vibes define
when I
who
first
I am.
started, he said about me, he goes, the boss was like, "Oh, you know, this guy, he passed this test and that test, and he was impressed with the certifications I had." And the guy that hated me, he goes, "Oh, well, so what? That just means he's good at taking tests."
Yeah, what a fuckwad.
He didn't even know me at that point. It's like, go fuck yourself, asshole.
Yeah,
And the funny thing is that guy didn't know how to do anything. He would always refer me to somebody else when I had a question.
right.
He couldn't figure out a damn thing on his own, but he would just push it off on other people, and he was the boss. You know.
That's what bosses do, man. But like some of them take it to extreme, like that guy. That sounds like shit.
Yeah, he was a dickhead. Like he didn't believe me that my fucking time card I couldn't put it in because the system was so stupid and messed up. And on my computer, for some reason, I wasn't getting the same results that other people were getting for the time card. And he didn't believe me. And then he's standing behind me watching me and like criticizing every missed keystroke, you know.
What a fuck.
I felt
What
like
kind of
turning
job
around
was this?
IT.
Oh,
I felt like turning around and just fucking letting him have it right as hard as I could, you
ooh.
know.
Yeah, just take a
Well,
roller and
that's probably
stick
the point to
the
not fully be yourself
Mm,
when it
yeah.
terminates in physical violence.
Well, he was a black belt. I was a black belt, and it would have been a good fight, probably.
Wow, dude, like a like was it an office or some shit?
Yeah, like a basement, you know, like a technical room, tech room, or whatever you want to call it. It was just me and two other people, and
Wow,
then the
man,
boss
like a
boss
fucking
would come in.
like uh fighting. What is that game? What is that movie called? Something games or something.
Hunger
Squid
Games.
Games, Squid
Yeah,
Game.
no, the fighting movie about the they fight like Fight Club. That's it. Fight Club.
Oh, Fight Club. Yeah.
Like Fight Club in that kind of station. That would have been wild, dude.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, he wouldn't yell at guys that did absolutely no fucking work, but he would come in and criticize me, and I was the one who worked my ass off. You know, like I had a work ethic. The millennials didn't have a work ethic at all. They would just watch videos the whole day, and they'd stand around talking to each other and shit, and they didn't do a goddamn thing all day. And I
Yeah,
was the one doing all the work, and then he's blaming me.
yeah, man. I've had bosses like that, but never to like yeah, that boss sounds like somebody I would have told to fuck off a long time before, man.
Yeah, I thought about. I've had bad dreams about fighting with him and shit, and it's like you know he
Oh
still
wow.
bothers me. He still bothers me. 4 years later. Anyway, I mean, why can't I just get along with people? You know, I'm pretty easy to get along with, and yet they decide that they don't like me right off the bat, and that's how it goes. You
I
know,
don't.
it's like,
It
oh,
seems like for the most part you do, at least from what I've seen
yeah, but
here on
people
YouTube.
just judge. People just are like, oh, well, I don't like this guy, so fuck him. You know,
Yeah,
like
people do. That's my point. People judge all the time, so I don't want. I'm not gonna calibrate my life to every random person's
right.
judgment.
That's why I stopped caring. It's like I'll just do what I do and be myself, and they can all go to hell. You know.
Yeah.
And besides, if I'm not going to be myself, then what am I here for? Because everyone's an individual for a reason, right?
Hey guys, I gotta hop off. I'll see.
All
Oh,
right,
take
later.
care, Busker. You too, TML. Good seeing you.
You know what I mean? We're all individuals for a reason.
I think there's strength in being who you are as an individual, and I think it's mentally healthier than to
Hmm.
not. Masking is a huge stressor.
You know who I look to for my kind of worldview is Frank Zappa. I swear to God, though,
I see it now.
he was a smart guy. He was a smart fucking guy, and he predicted what's happening now with our politics like 35 years
All
ago.
those rock musicians did in the 60s.
Yeah.
Pink
Well,
Floyd.
I just got an interesting text, Jeff. Remember when I was telling you before about that girl who I don't know who keeps smiling at me at the
Yeah.
coffee shop when I see her?
Mm.
So I texted my friend that I met here because she was with a friend when I met her, but I never got to look at her friend. I'm like, what does your friend look like that was there when we met? And apparently, she's like this Indian girl. This girl I keep saying is not Indian. She's blonde. Um, so now I know it's not her. So I'm like, okay, so whatever reason, she keeps smiling at me like she's familiar with me.
So it's
Not
not the girl
no,
that was with the other girl. It's some
just
completely
You,
different. Oh, wow.
you
That
well, no,
is.
smile
it's
back.
I don't really know. I'm not really sure what my reaction is because I'm not looking at my own face and I'm so puzzled by it.
Smile back.
Um,
Be puzzled. Just smile back.
but I mean, she keeps smiling back. So next time, I think I'll just go talk to her.
Just kind of do like a little.
Go, hey baby, what's happening?
Hey, baby.
Even my friend Julia agrees. She said you should say hi and then tell me everything.
Is she there now?
No, she just texted me on my phone.
Oh. No, I mean the
Here's,
girl, the
here's
smiling
what you
girl.
do. You say hi to her and you offer to buy her a coffee, right? You see her at the coffee place.
Ooh, I don't know what I could do for, but
No, I'm not gonna do that just yet. But definitely gonna just go up to her, and, do a polite introduction.
do you have different smile, like a range of smiles? I don't really see you smile a lot.
Well, there's not a lot that
I,
pleases me.
I
I'd
mostly
say
see a smirk.
I'd
Yeah,
I
say
do see anything at all.
I don't
I'd say
open
that
my.
the happiest you've seen me on stream is when somebody on your panel does or says something funny that makes me laugh. That's probably the only time you're really seeing me
Uh,
burst with joy.
and
Um,
it seems genuine, like you're not holding it back. That is the actual reaction you're
no,
having.
nobody's ever gotten confused by my laughter, so that's the one thing I don't really have to second guess.
So
I
I
got
guess
to,
that's part of the topic then. It's part of it is not to confuse people. So if you realize people are confused by you, and we're framing it as like find you threatening, but the larger context is they're just confused. Like they're not understanding how
yeah,
you're
the
coming
the
across, and they're
the
misinterpreting it. So if the goal is to not confuse people, and you realize they're confused, then you either stop what you're doing or you adjust it somehow until they get it right,
and I think it depends on again the nature of the
or
confusion.
you just verbally educate them.
Yeah, like but obviously it's like I think you know I think you can understand why somebody would hate to find out maybe one day that they come off as threatening to folks and they have made people feel intimidated or crush their confidence. I don't think anybody, even if they don't think it's their fault, would be happy to learn that. I think that would be, part
I,
of
I,
it might break their heart a little.
it does it with me. It gives me information about that because I don't personalize it about myself. It's about that person and how it's like I've been told many times before that I have an intense stare or my stare is intense. So if I'm just sitting here listening to someone talk, some people will comment on my gaze or how I'm talking. That tells me something about that person. I never take it as anything about myself because there's nothing wrong with I'm just looking. Like there's nothing I could even make about my stare if I wanted to. It's
A guy,
them just perceiving my look a certain way. So it's always about that person, never about me.
a guy I used to work with said that I have the creep stare. He says I give everyone the creep stare.
That happens a lot with autistic people. Girls find autistic people creepy, and it's just their natural spurginess, but it reads as creepy to a lot of women. I don't think that autistic people should be internalizing that, or I don't think they need to do a single thing about some girl finding them creepy. I think they should let that girl know it's autism. If you find it creepy, that's you perceiving it that way.
I'm not autistic, but I just don't blink a lot because like I'm always concentrating on everything real hard. So like I don't blink a lot. So that's where the stare comes from. You know, I'm like fucking bug-eyed looking at people right in
I'm
the eyes.
listening. I'm just interested in what they're saying, and I'm intently
Yeah.
listening.
Well, no, like when he said I do it like just even when I'm passing people in the hallway, and it's like, but I look them in the eyes. I make eye contact, which they may not like, and then I say good morning or hello or something, and that's where I get the creep stare because I'm friendly.
I don't care if people think I'm creepy. That's what I'm saying. If people think I'm creepy, that filters that person. I'm like, good. This is one less person I have to waste time
Yeah,
investing in. If they
yeah, I
find me
know.
creepy,
Oh, there
I
was
can
one
check them
woman.
off my list.
There was one woman. She fucking refused to say hello back to me at this job that I worked at, and I didn't work with her, so she didn't know me. But she was in the office, and every time she would pass by me, I would make a big fucking deal out of saying hello to her, just to see how, just to watch her squirm and shit, because
Oh, because you
wouldn't
knew
say
it
it back.
affected. So that's
Oh,
the
I
opposite extreme.
no, but I knew she wouldn't say it back, and it's like, well, fuck you then, you know, like that's why I stuck it to her because it's like you want to be an asshole, you know, being polite doesn't cost shit. Manners cost nothing, as they say, you know.
Unless people can tell that it's insincere or passive aggressive.
Well, it was sincere in the beginning. It took a long time for me to get to that point. A long time. I was like, well, maybe she didn't hear me. Maybe she's deaf or something, or maybe you know, maybe she didn't see me. But no, no.
You eventually eliminated all of those possibilities.
Yeah, and she was just an asshole from everyone that I talked to. I was
That
like, well,
sounds like passive aggressive. That's what they do here.
I said to people, I was like, what's up with her? You know, every time I say hi to her, she fucking keeps walking, doesn't say nothing. And they're like, oh, her? Oh, her, you know.
Yeah, I have no patience for passive aggression because passive aggression reads as aggression to me. If somebody's passive
Yeah,
aggressive, I'm ready to get it on. I am ready to fight.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
go in the
right.
cage and knock it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Cole, it's about when they're misinterpreting the energy. Because when I'm spurging out or I'm passionate or I'm animated or worked up about something, it's not anger. But people that grew up with angry parents or whatever read it as anger, so they are misreading what it is. And I think the thing to do there is to correct their impression, not to change what I'm doing. Because if I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm not going to stop doing it. I'm not going to pretend like I'm doing something wrong just because someone thinks I am.
Right. Like today, I was explaining something on the computer to my mother, and I was like, and I noticed that my voice got very pronounced and sharp. You know, I was like being, it's, and I thought to myself, I was like, Jesus, I sound like I'm angry or something, you know, but I wasn't. It's just that it's something that I'm passionate about, I guess, or that
Like you
I.
caught it yourself. Nobody had, like
Yeah, yeah.
nobody
I was
sent you a
I was
signal.
thinking to myself, I was like, man, if anybody listened to me right now, they would think I was yelling at her, but I wasn't. You know, I was just passionate about the subject.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to be. I like passionate people, so I don't ever think anything negative if I'm being passionate about it. It never crosses my mind to see it negatively.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you, what is it? There's a Black Sabbath lyric, and it goes, "The way I feel is the way that I am," and that's pretty deep in my opinion because
Yeah, I
that's,
like that. What album is that from?
oh, I don't know. It's the way I feel is the way I am.
And if they're interested in me
I
as a
don't know.
person, then they're gonna like try to understand what that feeling is. But because that's what there's people that are curious and they're trying to know you as a person, and there's people that are just trying to manage you for the benefit of other people around you. I'm not interested in those people. I'm only interested in people that want to engage in some kind of reciprocal understanding of each other. And
Yeah,
so if they're just trying to manage me because they're like sensing that other people are uncomfortable, I'm trying to stay away from those people. So all that does is give me the information I need about that person to filter them out of my life. They're not somebody that's trying to understand me. They told you were intense. I don't even know what intensity is. It's some vague quality that People that are not intense can detect it when it's happening, but they can't really define or describe it or point to what it is. It's so vague. But I've been told that too. I'm really intense, but I don't know what that means. Like I can be sitting here looking at something, not even talking, and people will find that intense.
Yeah, like I started wearing sunglasses now when I go out because it's like that way I don't have to worry about people looking at me and shit or me looking at them. You know, I can still look at them, but they don't know I'm looking at them. You know, like
Maybe I need to get some cool shades, like in that game.
well,
And
do you know who Willie is? Willie Hobo Ralph?
he's a YouTube person.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, he gave me my sunglasses because we met up in real life, and he
Oh,
gave
how
me a
was
pair of
that?
sunglasses. Oh, it was fun. We had a good
Willie
time.
Hobo Ralph.
Yeah, it's
Is it Hobo Willie?
Willay. I don't know. He doesn't stream, but he goes on panels a lot. You know.
Oh. Well, that's their problem because so even if people think I'm intense, so what? That's I'm not doing anything wrong. It's not a crime to be intense. I'm not doing anything wrong being intense. It's not anything bad to be intense. So even if I acknowledge the intensity, so fucking what? What is the harm being done here? If you can't handle intensity, then just get away from me.
Hmm.
Plenty of people can.
I think after I did acid, I got the habit of looking people in the eyes. It was like that. That's when it started. I know it, and they don't like to be looked in the eyes sometimes. You know.
Well, I don't know what to tell those people. Like,
It's a confrontation,
it's,
right?
eye
That's
contact
how
is.
humans.
I
That's
mean,
how humans.
I'm okay with people that don't make eye contact because autism and stuff. But I
Yeah.
think looking at the person you're talking to, there's nothing pathological about that. Let's see. Are you talking about the people who would want to hurt you if they thought
If
they could be seen for who they truly are?
I don't know.
Like people worry that you're gonna like those people are masking and they're worried that you're gonna penetrate the mask and somehow see who they really are, and so they get aggressively defensive in
Yeah,
reaction.
sure. I didn't think of that. Yeah, it's like I'm looking through them. People have said that to me. They're like, "Oh, you're looking through my soul or whatever," and I'm like, "What are you fucking talking about?" But now I think I understand that.
Those are probably the sociopaths that are trying to mask and hide that. Yeah, I can pick up on that too after a while.
Hmm.
But usually, like if a sociopath is worried somebody can see through their mask, they're just going to avoid that person to not have to blow their cover. I've dated plenty of sociopath guys, and that's usually the time they start finding reasons to break up if they feel like you're onto them.
Man, I had the perfect chick, but the problem was she was older than me. You know, so wouldn't have worked. But she was one
How
of
old?
those
How old? Maybe. Why is that a problem?
20 years older.
Oh Lord. Okay. She'd be like 70 something.
Yeah, she was one of those submissives though. It's like whatever I said fucking went, you know, like
A lot of people are looking for like one of the complaints is that there's not enough of those type of women.
I know.
The
She was
kind that make you
perfect.
the sandwich.
She was perfect in every way except for the age difference, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, this wasn't recently, by the way. I'm not banging 70-year-olds if that's what you're thinking.
Not that there's anything wrong with it if you are.
No, I'm not. I'm not banging anybody lately.
In my generation, it was about being who you are despite what other people think. And somewhere along the way, I don't know if it was the millennials or the alphas or what, it shifted to who you are can hurt or damage other people, and you have a responsibility to be aware and somehow manage how you be that person. And that is so far, like to a gay person in my generation, that was just coming to terms with his homosexuality and coming out of the closet and getting comfortable being gay in a world that was so hostile to that, the message that that could be harmful or hurtful would have just sent them right back into the closet.
Mm.
Like, in addition, because that fed into the narrative that gay people were harmful to begin with, that they were trying to make us believe. So we were trying to go out of our way not to internalize that stuff. And all of a sudden, the same community, or actually the next wave of it, it became about being aware of the risk in being yourself to other people.
Yeah, I think I would say though one thing that is very different is, even though I am a millennial, is that, much of what I reached on my conclusions, right, the things I have discussed today, and is coming from a completely different place than a lot of all the other stuff that you would associate with millennials, like just their anxiety, their neuroticism about all this stuff, and the feeling that they have to fit in, and this oh, I'm not being inclusive kind of stuff. That's, to me,
Or
that is
that
a,
you're harming somebody by being who
it's
you are.
it's a completely different postmodern thing. It's, I really got to this mindset after, thinking more about just the basic principles of Stoic philosophy, thinking about living in accord with nature, and why is it that I seem to be clashing with the world, and what can I do to avoid doing that needlessly, and it's a completely different. They're not looking at it that way. Like they're also the same kind of folks, I think, who see Stoicism as part of toxic masculinity, for example. And so, in some ways, it can seem similar, but I was just really drawing on things I saw the ancients discussing in their writings, and using that as a guide for behavior.
I like this comment. Most 70-year-olds may not even want to be banged anyway.
I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know how many 70-year-olds you know, but
A
in
lot.
fact, like most of the old people I know, and especially growing up, they were some of the raunchiest, dirtiest,
Yeah.
dirty talking, sexually oriented people I know. They were the
Not
ones.
not the ones I know. They're all fucking milk toast teetotalers,
Oh,
and
not
it's
my.
like,
We
get the
love sitting around listen to the old people. They were telling all the dirty jokes. They were
yeah,
talking all the sex.
well, that's who I'm going to be if I get older, which probably isn't going to happen. But
I aspire to it. I need to build up a repertoire to have something to talk about.
I'm not going to make it past 58. I don't
I'm
think.
working on it. I'm having better luck in a video game than in real life, and I would even call that luck.
That game is weird as fuck, dude. I don't understand.
It really is.
Hmm.
Um, it was made by a commie and a Hegelian.
I don't know, man. It's just like, why can't people just fucking not be so uptight? They look at you like you're going to attack them or shoot them or something. And I know it's because
I leave those people alone. If people that uptight, there's probably not a lot of potential for long-term
Yeah.
interpersonal success.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't try to invest in relationships where clearly they're wondering if I'm going to strangle them in the woods or something. But right, the only thing I can again really do is avoid stepping on a landmine.
Yeah, me too. Once I detonate it and know that it's there, then I can avoid it the second time, maybe sometimes.
When you think about it, if you passed Hitler on the street, he'd probably say hi to you, and some of these assholes won't.
I would just think, what a weird little what an ugly mustache. How could he walk around in public with that? Who let him do that? That's probably what I would think if I passed him.
Well, he wasn't the only one back
His
then.
campaign consultant told him to do that.
Oh, so he didn't come up with it on his own? What
Yeah,
was
his
he gaining
campaign
from
manager
that?
or whoever was, like, whatever you would call that, basically said that he needed to have a very recognizable appearance to be successful
Oh.
politically. And he realized that if he did the mustache that way, especially if you think in the context of like black and white pictures in the papers and stuff, that
Right.
he would be much easier to recognize. So
Well,
Well,
I
it
guess if
worked.
that was the goal, it worked because
yeah,
he
he did not do
certainly
that
is
until he started
recognizable.
getting involved. He actually had more of like a handlebar mustache when he was young.
Hmm.
So that was a change he made to be politically recognizable.
He probably used pomade in his mustache to twirl it up.
Maybe that's why Trump has his orange bouffant. Somebody told him he needed to be recognizable.
Hey, you know,
And
I
you
saw
can't
this
do
thing
the
the other
stash
day.
is taken.
I saw this thing the other day where Trump was talking to this girl who obviously had like Down syndrome or something, you know, and she won like the Special Olympics medals. And he was talking to her like she was a real person and he wasn't condescending or anything. He was very, very nice. And you'll never see that shit in the news when they talk about him, you know?
Mhm.
Wow, you're right. I did see it in the news. I can't even find. I'm googling for it. I can't even find it.
No, you'll never find it. It was a short on YouTube. Actually, I may have the link because I think I sent it to someone just to make a point.
Hey, Jess, welcome. What's up?
Yeah, here it is. I got the link, Jeff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you pop it in the back, I'll play it.
Yeah, I will. It's only like a minute long.
As long as
You know.
there's no copyright music, I could always mute it.
No, it's not copyrighted. It's news, basically.
Sometimes they have music tracks playing in the background.
Here comes the porn bomb. No, I'm just kidding.
This is recent.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so very humanizing.
Yeah.
People could take a lesson. God, he
This
shows
is,
no anxiety or discomfort whatsoever.
yeah.
Plus, I'm pretty sure his kid is a Sperg Baron, so it's
Yeah.
good that he has this
But
skill
this is the
set.
guy they're calling the next Hitler, right?
Here it is. Let's see.
Donald Trump.
How did you feel about winning? How did you feel?
I did good. I did 5 time water, 5 times over.
Whoa, that's not bad. Thank you.
Mr.
very much.
President, Jane was telling us beforehand, we were waiting in the Roosevelt room, she was sharing that she was so excited that her dad and she both have the same color hair as you.
See the
Pretty proud of that.
Yes.
I hope he has a beautiful head of hair like that. That is better.
So my dad called her head.
He likes the hair. That's very interesting. I'm going to have to think about that.
See, he's treating her like she's a
Thank
completely
you. Say
normal
hello to
person,
your
which
dad,
is the
right?
exact
No, I'll
thing
tell you
to
why.
Go ahead.
My dad
do.
died.
This is so impressive.
And my mom too.
I like it.
You're in the Oval Office, and they're looking down on you, and they see gold, right? That's gold.
Yes.
That's really something,
Wow.
and they're very proud of you.
Just when I
right?
thought he
So,
couldn't top the
congratulations,
fries.
Tom.
Yeah, they're not going to show you this side of the.
Yeah. See, now
keeps
that's
winning
that's
me
not
over.
they'll keep talking about grab her by the pussy, but they won't show that once.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it's definitely manipulated. It's a manipulated narrative.
Yeah, well, he got bullied in his first term, and I hope they don't do that this term. I'm
Well,
starting to think,
dude, he is. I can't remember the last time a president was this active. Like he's
Yeah.
been what 4 or 5 days, and he's
and he did
already
some shit. Yeah, he got
everything
rid
I
of the
voted him
flag and
for that I
everything.
was concerned about DEI and censorship. He
Did you hear
already within not even a week in office, he's already taken care of both of those things.
Did you hear
Yeah.
he got rid of the pride flag though?
He said they couldn't fly it like in official, like where the U.S.
Yeah,
flag is, which is good.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why they were
Yeah.
flying it in the first place.
No, I
The
agree.
U.S. flag is the only flag that needs to be up there.
I'm just
That's
going to
right.
say
That already represents all the rest of the stuff.
I'm gonna point this out before I leave. Like to the folks who say, "Oh, they're just the right's doing the culture wars to distract from bread and butter issues." If you're trying to plant a flag over everything, you look like you're leading a culture war. And I'm just gonna say, like, folks who want to say that, they have to be okay with the flag not being flown over things. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck it.
you got to make it look like it's just if it's a thing, it's a thing that individuals do and not institutions. Like there's a reason we put the American flag over the moon, right? It was to say, oh, this is America's conquest of the stars, right, over the Soviets. So, it was very much a political statement to do that. And that's what flags are for.
Yeah, we are one nation. I think he's restoring a sense of national unity.
Right. Let's hope, because it's getting
Right.
crazy, man.
Right. And so, like, if you want to distill something to, like, if you want the focus to be on something, again, this kind of just goes to everything I said up to this point, right? Be careful about how you are expressing yourself, because if you say, "Oh, I'm just flying the flag for pride," to you it might be pride. To other people, it's waving a
But
flag
that's
of
not their
conquest.
problem, because people do that with the American flag. There's people that read the American flag a certain way. I remember a school teacher that said she didn't feel comfortable teaching with the American flag in her classroom.
Well, it's one thing to feel uncomfortable about that in the United States, where it's just the country of that flag, right? But it certainly sends a different message if you start waving that flag anywhere else in the world, right? Like the flag was raised over Iwo Jima for a reason, right? It was to note that we beat you. That's what it was saying. It was a really hard fight, and we beat you. And that's why it was the same thing with the moon, right? It took 8 years between when Kennedy said, we choose to go to the moon and do the other things, to when we actually got on there.
Not because they're easy.
So, yeah, I would just say, like, flags, I'm not going to say they're always a sign of that, but, like, it's very easy to send that message, especially when you start putting it up in more and more places. And just be mindful of that. Right? There's a reason, like, secret societies and stuff try to, like, sneak their emblem into things everywhere, right? It's a mark that they control things, right? And
or they want you to think that.
Yeah, they want you to think that, right? So that's just what I'd always say is, it's one, you can express yourself, but just be mindful of the way you do it could be taken a wrong way. And if you genuinely want to express yourself, at some point,
That's what I'm talking about, of the shift of generations. If you're going to express yourself, be mindful of how it comes across, is very foreign and different to the message of my generation, which is express yourself, and who cares how you come across. Don't worry about how you come across. Express yourself despite what people might think of you. And now it's shifted to express yourself, but be aware of how you might come across. That is the complete opposite message that my generation was trying to give each other.
In another 40 years, it'll be your generation again, where they'll do the same damn thing. They'll express themselves, and then it just cycles repeat. I mean, I sometimes look at what's happening today, and I reference it to the 60s with the civil rights movement. Like, when Black Lives Matter was rioting, and,
Black Lives Mattered.
And I will say, yeah, you know what? I'm not saying this as, like, some sort of perspective that I think summarizes how millennials feel, because I don't feel like I've heard other millennials say this much at all. I've had millennials tell me just a bunch of stupid bullshit.
Be mindful how you're perceived is definitely a message of this generation. Like I don't know if it's millennial or the next one after that, but the current modern zeitgeist is all about being aware of how you come across. And I think of that training where they told me I was tall and a male, and I need to be aware of how people could perceive that. And I said, no, I don't. There's nothing I have to be aware of because I'm a male and tall.
Right.
If they have a problem with it, that is their problem. If they're threatened, intimidated, and perceive me a certain way, that is their problem. There's nothing I have to do as a result. And so the message completely, that was a Gen X stance, and the message completely got flipped to now we're being told, and this was in a formal training at a job, we're being told that the extra responsibility we have to be aware of how our expression might be perceived. That is not a thing from my generation.
I'm going to say another thing too, is that when they say that, it's always one-sided. It's this side has to be aware of how they can communicate, but this other side doesn't. This other side can never fumble the ball in communication, right? So I'm going to say it's always one-sided. And in my case, it's something that I say to, pretty much everybody, right? Like, you can always put your foot in your mouth. You can always have communication go wrong, and it's not necessarily due to an error on the other person's part. And you can be mindful of just what increases your success rates and how you can turn the dial to do that. And I think if you're really expressing yourself to a point, you're hoping the message, in some cases, gets through to other people and they can get you. right? If you're trying to speak English, but they're only hearing Spanish, you got to work on your English at some point. You know, or
No, they need to
figure
work
out
on their
different.
English. If I'm speaking English and they're hearing Spanish, they need to work on their English, not me.
Jeff, how tall are
You
you?
need to pinpoint it, right? Is it something that they can't hear well or that you can't express well? And I'm going to say it's a different answer for other folks. But again, that's just sort of where I wanted to leave it because I got to go and I need to prepare for something
All
I'm
right.
doing at 7.
Let us know what happens with Smiley Girl.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If anything, I'll let you know.
Take
Good
care.
luck.
Guys.
I'm 6'3", is that?
6'3". Fuck you, man.
Very
I feel
intimidating.
threatened. I feel threatened.
I had no idea until I went to that training.
God damn, brother, that's tall. I mean, I'm 5'10", and
people are
everyone
not
tells
threatened
me
when
I'm
they're
tall.
asking me to reach something for them or get something off the shelf or put this thing up, hang this thing here. They're not threatened when they need something done for
Yeah,
them.
exactly. The old lady asked me, "Can you get those bottles for me on the top shelf?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." You know, but I'm only 5'10". That's nothing.
Oh my! You seem tall. I thought you were taller. I picture you as tall. You come across taller on YouTube.
No, that's just you're just seeing my spirit. You know, my aura.
Yeah, you have a tall spirit.
All right. Well, I gotta go, Jeff. But have a good day, and
You too.
always nice talking to you.
You too, as always.
Have a good one, man.
Take care. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
I like the red light today. Okay, I think that's a good little stream. We recovered a lot of the ground we end up covering because we think so differently about this, and I'm starting to wonder how much of it might be generational. Although I take Joe at his word when he says in his particular case it's not. It's more from his personal background. But if he wants to be aware of how he might be received, then he can be aware that he might be received as speaking as part of this general millennial Gen Alpha ethos of being aware of how you affect other people. Mike was 6'5", my partner Mike. He was even taller than me, which helped in a lot of ways. Having somebody that could kind of match me in height. We didn't have to work. Anyway, I won't go into detail. Y'all could use your imaginations. All right, I think I'm gonna roll this one up and possibly go do another episode of that game. I'll probably take tomorrow off as usual. If I don't, it'll be some kind of spontaneous something. And see you on Monday. I might pick up that myth series again now that I have some time. And things got busy for a while. You too, Cult. Have a happy Saturday and Sunday. Have a happy entire rest of your weekend. And I'll do better than that. Have a whole happy next week, too. In fact, I hope your entire 2025 is happy. And you know what? I'm going to go all in. I hope the whole rest of your life is happy. I wish you nothing but joy the whole rest of your life as much as realistically possible. I want nothing but good for you, all of you. And I mean that. All right. I'll probably be back on in a bit in Disco Land. But this is it for normal conversation oriented streams. Until later. All right, take care everybody. Good seeing all of you. Have a great weekend. I mean that. Have a great life. Have a great world. Let's all be great and more loving. All right, take care. What happened to the music? There you go. Yes, exactly. Okay. Get into the dot. Yeah, the dots. That's where I'm headed. Daddy. Bye.